Just a few years ago, he took a handgun, put it close to his lips, and really thought long and hard about pulling the trigger, just looking for some relief. Today, one of the founders of the most coveted mastermind, War Room, Roland Fraiser, is here with us today to talk about turning the impossible possible. Join us. Welcome to That Geek Show, the only show in the world that puts you face to face with the experts in real time. What you want to do is you want to hop on in to thatgeek.com/live, right here, so you can be part of the conversation, not just tune in. And today we have with us an investor, a realtor, mastermind expert, and everything together, Roland Fraiser. Hey, Roland, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
Good. I have to tell you, this is like I've been doing this for like 8 years, I think, broadcasting and hosting amazing guests like yourself. And it's the first time I'm getting butterflies again, like I used to get in the early days of interviewing. And I think it's because this topic is really, really close to my heart and very emotional. You know, when you start talking about being at the bottom, like when you were sharing, you know, you're sitting there with a gun in your hand and going like, how can I find relief, right? This is insanely emotional, right? So can you take me to that moment and tell me, like, you know, I know your wife left you, your business partners took you out of the business, you called the business and they just removed your name from it, your friends and family were shunning you out. What was that like?
It was not good. It was
Yeah.
not one of the happier times in my life.
Yeah, but you know, when you find yourself in that situation, most people, well, I can't say most people, many people will turn into alcohol or drugs or food or something else, right? What happened to you where you were sitting there going like, you know, everything is gone and I'm going to turn this around?
It was not an instant process. It was a significant period of time because I had, you know, it all came about as a result um, of me having challenges with the government and having a problem with authority and not thinking that that you should have to file certain things to protect money offshore and things like that. So I did asset protection for a lot of different clients and a lot of known people. And I just, you know, I had the attitude of if you can find the technical way that makes something work, and it's something that I don't believe is morally correct, then you should be able to take your money, your assets, whatever, and put them wherever you want, and nobody else should have the right to nose into that. There was an act called the Patriot Act that happened, I think, around 2000. That really was when the government decided that that privacy that you used to have was going to be taken away, and
Yeah.
all these reports had to be done. I didn't agree with it, and the government didn't agree with me not agreeing with it. So, you know, at one day, the Federal Bureau of Investigation raided my law offices, took all my stuff, and there was a complaint filed called the United States of America versus Roland Fraiser. And when that happened, the stress of that on the infrastructure that I had was too great for it to survive. It was very hard for me to deal with. Like I said, I called, that happened while I was overseas. And I called my law firm and they answered without my name. My wife, I came back. My wife told me, you know, sometime later, you know, that she didn't, you know, that basically it wasn't going to work out. She didn't want to be with me anymore. And, you know, and I was obviously not responding well in terms of the stress. So I'm sure that I wasn't the best person in the world to be around either. So it's just kind of a terrible cycle that,
Yeah.
that you feel bad, and then the people around you feel bad, and then you're hard to get along with because you're depressed and stressed out, and then that stresses them out because they've got their own version of what's going on. And that was a pretty bad place, and it ended with, maybe you'll go to jail for 5 years or longer, and you'll lose your ability to practice law, and you won't be able to do the thing that you define when people say, what do you do? I'm an attorney. Well, I had said that for 13 years.
Right.
And so, to think about not being able to say that anymore, and then what do you do going forward? That was a lot. And it was I don't know, maybe a year or two, maybe, gosh, that was towards the end of 2002. So certainly from 2002 to 2003, 2004, somewhere between 2 and 3 years of just really, really hardcore depression, 6 months of just not wanting to get out of bed, and then kind of running from the feelings by traveling everywhere. That was all just, like trying to figure out what was going to happen. And by the way, as all this was going on, because there was a case that the government had, and of course, then the Internal Revenue Service came and said, U.S. millions of dollars also.
Just by the way, right? Just kind of like,
Yeah. So it was like there was not a lot to look to for in terms of support, and in terms of what did the future hold. So it was very, very scary, and it was the first time I think I had ever really seriously contemplated opting out and not continuing to deal with it. And somehow I got through that period of being depressed, of running away from things, of not knowing what was going to happen, which was in its own right quite terrifying. And I couldn't tell you, I know the moment that it changed for me, but I couldn't tell you that, here's this thing that I did or that I saw or whatever that got me through to the other side. But the funny thing is if you decide that you want to commit suicide and you Google, how can I do that? Because that's the first place that you would go. Then all you get is help not committing suicide.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not a good customer experience for the person who wants to commit suicide to go to Google and try to figure out how to do it. And then all the ways, as I was thinking, well, I could jump out of this building that I'm in, and then I could jump in front of that bus, and I could do this. But all the ways that I was thinking of doing it, like, hurt other people, and I wasn't of a mind to take a whole bunch of pills or something like that. It just didn't make sense. And I don't know. I went through thinking about all the different things and somehow came to the other side of I am going to face whatever this is, and I'm going to deal with it. And that was and I'm not a super religious person, but that was in a small alcove of a church in Denmark, in Copenhagen, that had stained glass all at the top, and there was benches around it, and it was maybe octagonal or more sided. And I was sitting there on the bench just thinking about everything, and I decided that I was going to just to deal with it and face it all and handle whatever happened. And so that was the decision that I ultimately made. And then after that, once I had made that decision and I had ruled out the option of of suicide or other bad things, it was just then, okay, so what do I do? What's the next step? One step at a time. And it was really, really hard, but I'm happy that I didn't choose that particular option.
I know a lot of people in the world are happy that you didn't choose that option, especially your new wife, right? So I'm hearing a lot about, nowadays, there are a lot of people, even 10-year-olds are committing suicide, which is insane to me, right? Because I have a 10-year-old and I'm like, I can't even imagine. But and there's a lot of help for people who are depressed and feeling like they need something. But it sounded like you didn't have any of that, right?
No, I not that I couldn't have called the all of the places on Google when you say, how can I commit suicide, that offer to help. But it was my path was, those things are great. That my path was just different. I'm a person who looks within to find my strength, not without. And that's not good, bad, wrong, right. That's just for me. Um, but as far as, 10-year-olds and things like that, to me, it's, you're never, I guess, at a really, when you're in an emotional state. I mean, a 10-year-old or 15 or 18 or 21, they're just not emotionally developed enough to even be able to have that conversation. And I think you could say suicide is never a logical conversation, but someone just told me actually yesterday that the guy that founded No Fear was committed suicide because he was in so much pain from all of his back injuries and things like that he made a decision to do that. So I think there's very few people. I think Robin Williams, who I believe made the decision because he had a brain disease, and they said you're going to get progressively worse. So maybe those people are the very, very few who are making a logical decision after, and certainly one that a lot of people wouldn't agree with. But daggone, I mean, when you're in the height of some emotional situation like I was, or, a 10-year-old who's been rejected, or, there's so many things that seem like they are literally the end of the world when you're that age, that you then later find, gosh, that just wasn't anything. And interestingly enough, for me, despite the, what I felt was the magnitude of all the things that were happening, it wasn't the end of the world either, because obviously there is life on the other side. And now, having gone through all of the stuff that I went through to get to the other side, it seems like what an idiotic decision that would have been. So it's I think that the having people part you mentioned, the having people to talk to who can help you through the emotions to the logic of the right decision is an invaluable resource that maybe would have been great for me, and maybe it would have helped me get there a whole lot faster. But I think that just being able to have the time to not feel rushed to make that decision was what probably helped me get to the right place. And I will say also, thank God that Google doesn't say, here's the 6 easy steps to commit suicide when you Google that in the 0 search position box.
Sometimes it's good that the results are skewed toward a good direction that we want to. So you're sitting there in the church and you're making a decision to change. So what's the first thing that you do after that? You walk out and what?
I just cried. It was an emotional relief cry. And I probably stayed there for a couple of hours, and then it was just like relief. It was relief from getting from the what am I going to do to I'm going to do this, whatever it is, and I'm going to deal with it as best I can, and whatever happens, happens. So that was where I came out, specific stepwise. I didn't have like, okay, and now here's my 7-step process. It was just take it a day at a time as it comes. And then I think it's the unknown in that situation for me. And I recently had a friend that passed from a long battle with cancer that they lost. And I had several people that I knew from high school that committed suicide. We only had, I think, 36 people in my graduating class, and a significant portion of those people either succeeded or attempted to commit suicide. And gosh, I think it's just the unknown that scares a lot of people. I think if you have a horrible disease or something that's hanging over you like I had, or just that the thing that's causing you to consider the possibility is if you just have time and you don't actually commit to a decision, that it just all works out. It just does. And the thing that the thing that you're so scared of, with the only exception I could think of would be that thing that you are certain is going to be a progression of disease, but you just never know. My wife had stage 4 thyroid cancer and was told she had 90 days to live. And she chose to fight that. And she could have given up. She could have committed suicide. She could have said, I'm just going to go do fun things until I can't do fun things anymore. But she chose the harder path of fighting that. And so even when the doctors tell you, you got 90 days and you're dead and it's not pretty.
Yeah.
They might be wrong. They were with her. She's, 12 years, I think now past that.
That's fantastic.
And
yeah, and it's, we often forget that doctors are human too, right? And as humans, we all make mistakes. So many times it's kind of like you need a second, a third, and a fourth, and maybe your own opinion before you go and make a life-changing decision like that, right? So what do you say? I know you're working and you're interacting with people from all facets of life, right? Successful people and people who are just starting out, and you're interviewing, you have your own podcast. So you're encountering a lot of people in different stages of their life, different stages of success or depression or personal. When someone finds themselves in a spot like you were, before you made a decision, what can help them, to get to a part? You said time, you said support, but how is it that, people who are not used to digging in and kind of hearing their own voice, especially with all of social media kind of like around us, wow, what's a good path for them to take to start moving in the direction of life?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about, if you're in the moment of thinking, do I want to end my life? I think it is, I think that it is get help, and it is don't make a decision, because you can't ever come back from that decision. And you always have that option as long as you're alive to not be alive anymore.
Right.
So maybe get closer, allow yourself the time to get closer to the thing that you're so scared of that's causing you to think about making that decision before you actually make it. That would be the very first thing, that you have the option. If you feel that you have the option, because I think suicide is a thing that happens when you feel you have no options, that the pain is so great of whatever it is that you're experiencing or about to experience, that you've decided you just can't deal with that and you don't want to. And you have the option until the event horizon, to the thing where to the time and when that thing that you're so concerned about actually happens. You have up until then to make the decision. So you have up until then to figure out, is it the right decision? So I think being aware of that would probably be the very first step, that, hey, I don't have to do this today.
Right.
I have this much time. And then
That's good advice.
having conversations with yourself, or preferably, it was, not the smartest thing for me to do to not get help. But the challenge is, and, for me at that time, and I suspect for a lot of people that are in it, I just wasn't in a position to receive any help from any third party. I needed to process. And so by not moving forward with the decision, I was able to have time to process. And now, when I talk to people, because I've had people that are in a similar situation to what I was in, and I've talked to other folks who were in, a pretty rough spot mentally. So I can talk about, this is all that I was thinking at the time, and this is the other side for me, and the other side's pretty daggone good. As a matter of fact, turns out the other side is way better than the side before that I was so concerned about,
Right.
About losing. And I did decide I can have a positive impact, and I can go forward in whatever scenario I found myself in. I could still be happy. I could still do good things. And then going through all the process of all the crap I went through after making the good decision to not leave also helped me understand that I can be happy in pretty much any situation. So that having the ability to do that, it's kind of like having taken drugs in the past, when you're talking to somebody who's like, should I take drugs?
Right.
And you want to say, well, if you've never done it, as smart a decision as that might be, it is really hard to have the credibility with somebody that's going through something that you don't understand. So having gone through everything I went through, I feel like I have the credibility. I'm at least in a good position to say, I literally was there with a gun in my hand thinking,
Yeah.
that's that's a tough spot to be in. And if somebody can say, I'm there, I relate to that, and then that connection helps them to listen,
Yeah.
that's the thing. And and I'm not a giant woo woo person. I'm not a like a codependent. I'm a very independent, strong minded, just ask my wife person. uh, and so, I might not be as open as I should be to receiving advice from somebody that I don't feel has the positional credibility for me to believe their life is together enough for me to want to listen to them. And when you're in an emotional state where maybe are looking for reasons to reject advice,
Mm.
that's a challenge too. So it's a
Yeah.
complicated riddle.
Yeah, and so one of the things that you shared in your post is that that moment made you realize that you thought you were not a selfish person, but when you looked back, you're like, wow, I was very selfish, and you transformed into what you call a servant heart.
Yep.
So that I'm sure was a journey, right? To go from like, wow, I don't really like the person that I was, and not taking it with guilt and shame, right? Because a lot of people go like, man, I messed up so much in my life. How can I even go forward? How can I even look at anyone in the eye? How can I change my actions now, my reputation now? Because everybody will remember when I wasn't the person that I want to be today. So how do you
Yeah.
make that switch from like, I was X, I was version 1, now I'm version 2, and I want the entire world to look at me as version 2 and trust that I am coming in not as a selfish person as I was before, but a servant that I am now.
Yeah, I think it's as easy as making the decision to do it. So for me, it was, I'm going to look back and see how had I been that got me to that point. And then I'm like, okay, well, you made some bad decisions and you ignored the advice of some smart people and some people that cared about you, and that put you in the position that you were in. And then how did I treat those people? Was I, the people that left, did they leave because they're bad people, or did they leave because I was not in a position, I was, at least I was beyond their ability to help, or their perception of their ability to help, or their skill set of having the ability to help, and me get to a more reasonable place. And then so I guess it's, for me, I just looked at all of that and said, what's my part? And I'm not a victim kind of person, so clearly I'm not a victim of the world or these people or any other situation. I am here because of all the decisions that I've made that led me up to here. So let me look at those decisions. How did I behave in my relationships? How did I make those decisions that turned out not to be that great? And then it's like, oh wow, okay, because a lot of um, a lot of ultimate bad decision paths start with a moderately bad decision and then lead incrementally to the bad thing. So it was like, okay, I see that incrementalism in where I was, and where I started and where I got to. And I can decide today, I don't want to be that person. I wasn't a bad person. I made bad decisions. That, I think that's important too, is if
Yes.
you can separate your humanity from the decisions that you've made, then you can elect to make different decisions today, which was what I did. And I'm going to do these things differently. I'm going to be this way. This is who I am. This is how I am, instead of that's how I am. That's who I am. Well, I don't define myself as any of the ways that a lot of people define themselves based on their past behavior. I am not, an attorney or a convict or a bad person or a former suicide thinker or anything else. I'm just me today, here, and whatever decisions I make today are the impact that I will have today and going forward. And so if you make that decision and then you say, this is who I am and how I am now, then the other stuff doesn't matter. Now, there are haters that'll come out and say, yeah, but you did this and you did
Right.
that. And it's like, you have to say, I did, and I wish I hadn't, but this is who I am and how I am now. And I respect if that's not something you can deal with. I'm cool with that. And you have to be cool with that because you have to own that. But you can't let that, well, you can. It's better, in my opinion, to not let that define you. And I don't think I have any right to be mad at people that would be upset about that or wouldn't want to do business with me or wouldn't want to be friends with me. Um, I think it's a loss probably for both of us.
Yeah.
And it's a filter too, though, of um, the compassionate, thoughtful, open-minded people that I would like to have in my life now. And so that, you just have to, I think it's own what you did, where you were, don't be defined by it. Understand that today and every day is how you decide how you are and who you are and how you're going to show up. And then just be sure that you're doing that in the best way that you can, that is as close to the person you want to be as possible.
I love that. I love that because it's very authentic and it's very real, right? And it allows people to connect with you as a human being, as who you are right now. And it's funny because you think, they're always talking about women and remember when, and you said, and by that time you did that. And I wonder how many of those relationships did you have like, but there was this one time when you were late for, or there was one time where, I couldn't trust what you were saying. Why would it be different now? What do you tell people when they say that?
I don't have that because I like that. To me, that's not productive. It's
I like that.
you're,
Yeah.
I'm, perhaps it might not be the best way to be, but to me, I'm not going to be, I'm not going to allow myself to be whiplashed with the past. I'm not going to, you can't flog me with my mistakes. I'll own them. And if that doesn't work for you, fine.
Yeah.
You have to believe who I am and how I am now. And if you don't, I understand and I'd wish you no ill will. We're not going to be able to be friends or in a relationship or whatever. And because you can spend your time apologizing for past mistakes, or you can spend your time doing the good that you can do going forward. And I only want to do the good that I can do going forward. I'm not going to be defined by or in a relationship where somebody is going to beat me up with my past. And I don't think anyone should be. I don't think it's healthy.
Yeah. And so you're making this decision and you're deciding to move forward. Um, and you're spending a few hours in the church, getting up, wiping the tears, moving on and deciding to, okay, I'm going to rebuild my life. Do you think that you rebuilt it faster because of the experience that you had as a lawyer and the success that you had before that allowed you to be like, okay, now I know what to do and I can do it way faster than I did it the other time?
I think that I read one time that success is like a thermostat. And so that if you are here on the thermostat at, let's say, 68 degrees, then it will not be any problem for you to get to 68 degrees again. It will be hard for you to get to 80 degrees. And I think that's true when it comes to success. And I think that it goes back to, was it Roger Bannister that broke the 4-minute mile, and Fosbury, I think maybe Dean Fosbury, that approached the high jump differently. And I'm not a big sports guy, but I like those examples because if there's a bar that no one thinks can be hit and then somebody hits it, then all of a sudden all these other people think it's possible. And so I think that with your own life, you can always get back to the success that you've known because you know that you can do that. And I think that any success and any limitation on success is only mindset. So the only reason that I didn't invent Facebook or Microsoft or something like that is because I have limitations in my mind that are stopping me from thinking as big as I could think. So yes, absolutely, getting back to that place that you were. It didn't have anything to do with being an attorney, but it did have everything to do with I knew that I could get to a certain level, and I've gone significantly past that level because of understanding this, I think, and then constantly trying to find, how am I limiting myself? Where am I thinking too small? How can I think bigger? How do I increase the quality of the relationships that I've got? How do I get myself in front of the things that'll propel me to the places that I want to be? And voraciously learning constantly and voraciously networking constantly. But yes, absolutely. That's a very long answer to your question. Yes, having had success before, getting back to that place that you were before, it's really easy and it's way faster.
So we're wanting to help people now make the impossible possible. And you know all that stuff, right? There's no impossible, impossible. What the first thing that people need to do is change their mindset. I hear you say, right? First of all, think
Yep.
that you can. To get there, you are an avid reader. Would you say books and events are helping you change your mindset, or is there something else people can do to actually start shifting?
It's yeah, it's everything to me. It's it's books and things that I read, and the people that I hang out with, and you know, just being open minded, and also understanding that I am so far from being the person that I want to be, and I'm so far from being the success that I want to be. But I am happy. I am happy to have come to where I am, but I am not content to remain where I am. So that gives me the ability to reward myself and pat myself on the back and say, hey, good job for what you've done. But it also keeps me from saying, you know, yeah, you're awesome, you're amazing, and you don't need to do it, you know, or you're better than other people, or all that. That's just a horrible place to find yourself. So I think that happy with what you've accomplished, happy, content with where you are, but not satisfied, always looking for how can you improve yourself in every single way is important. And so to me, all of the media that are available, from live events to masterminds uh, to other people who can be mentors and guides to, and even people who might be really, who might excel in some part of their lives, but the whole rest of their lives are all messed up. There's things you can learn from them too. Uh, so I think that's it, is just being open-minded and ever seeking.
So, and you know, I'm looking at your life. You always surround yourself with amazing people. You attend many masterminds. You network a lot. If someone is just starting out, right, and they're not at the level where they can join board of advisors or war room, or you know, one of those major networking events, what would you say the first step for them to start surrounding themselves with like-minded people who can actually lift them up and open new avenues of thought from where they are right now?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. The first thing to me is I people ask me from time to time, it's like, who are your mentors? And I'll be like, well, this week it was Conrad Hilton and Henry Ford and John Rockefeller, because I was reading their autobiographies. And I think that you can have you can have virtual mentors by surrounding yourself with smart people who have written their wisdom in a book in the form of an autobiography. So I really like autobiographies, and I like autobiographies from people that I respect in some area. And so I read a lot of those. And so I would tell them that those are free. They're at the library if you don't have the money
Right.
to, you know, to buy a Kindle book or an audiobook. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is uh, there are always people who are willing to give back if you show some progress. So I think if you're just starting out, I think it's very difficult to find someone who has the bandwidth, who might be at the success level that you're trying to be at, to to be a mentor for you. But I do think there are people that do that, particularly people who have retired, so they don't have like a demanding schedule right now, but they have lots of wisdom to offer. I think those can be fantastic mentors. And then there are lots of free mastermind groups as well. So I belong to several free masterminds that don't charge any money to be part of, and it's just people who get together. Like here in San Diego, we've got a couple of those that I belong to, and one of them I think is maybe 8 or 10 people, and one's a little bit bigger. It might be 25, and they'll meet, some of them once a month, some of them once a week. I don't go to all the meetings, but but there are things like that, that if you put yourself into the flow of whatever it is that you want to mastermind about, you will find that there are groups of people that are smart, that are getting together, that don't charge money, that you can talk to. And you know, who's to say that they're better or worse than the ones that cost
That's
30,
true.
50, 100 grand, right? It's what are you going to get out of it? So I think but I believe very, very strongly that modeling, mentoring, and masterminding is the key to everything. So if you find the mentors that can help you have the mindsets and show you the shortcuts, and you get the models of the people who have already proven that a certain thing works, and that's where you start as your starting point, and then you tweak and adjust and split test your way up from there. And you get with a group of people who are all trying to make each other better, then you can only succeed. If you're
Yeah.
open-minded and you're making effort, you can only succeed with those three M's.
Yeah. And, if you want more change, you have to change, right? So you have to start changing either what you read, what you consume. We all have a computer in the palm of our hands, and most of us are busy just going like that. There are many, many things. YouTube is filled with them. Quora is filled with them. Google is filled with them. You can learn anything you want. The one ingredient I think that is missing for most of us, especially in nowadays in the instant gratification time, is patience, right? And I think
Yes.
it took you, when you decided you wanted to get in front of Ryan Dice, took you about 3 years to kind of start having real conversations with him.
Well, I don't know. So it was, I mean, I learned about Ryan through looking to improve, looking for models. And Ryan had a thing, I don't remember the name of it. It had like three initials, but it was before it was Digital Marketer. And I was like, this guy's smart. And I followed Ryan and a few other people because I definitely wanted, as the internet was coming into its own, I really wanted to find some good folks that I could learn from, as always.
Yeah.
And so when they held the event, the Traffic and Conversion Summit event, I went because I was already paying to be on his thing, which I wish I could remember what the name of it was. But I was already paying to be a part of that. It wasn't much, it was like maybe $20 a month or 29 or something like that. And, or it might've even been less. And then they were having a live event, and I was like, oh, the live event sounds great because they're going to cover all this stuff over a couple of days, and I'll meet some people. Cool. And I'm not a go out and shake your hands kind of guy. I'm more kind of hang back and observe. But it was just amazing, and it took me until a year after that. So I mean, I knew of him probably for maybe 2.5 years, before I connected one-on-one with him, and not even one-on-one, but a few on one, because at the second TNC, I went to the first one. I did not join the mastermind that time. I joined the second year, and they had a thing for people who had achieved some level of success. And I forget what I had done, but I had some success doing some stuff online. And so I went to this little meeting, and it was probably only maybe 30 people, and it was Ryan and Perry that were there. And they were the two guys that were the principles of Digital Marketer. And so, but although I don't even think Digital Marketer existed then either, but and that was the first time that I really got to talk with them. But I didn't really have a chance. Gosh, I mean, I don't know, like a actual one-on-one. It was probably 4.5 years down the road, because I would see them in small groups, but like to actually have a one-on-one conversation. And I've only really had the opportunity because Ryan's got 4 kids and he's very, very busy. And even though we've been partners for going on 7 years now, I've only really over the last few years had a chance to sit down one-on-one to really get to know him, as opposed to, like, you could be in business with people, but you don't really get to know them that long. And we were just in London for 2 days after a bunch of stuff that we did, pretty much just me and him. That's the longest time we've ever had, and now I'm, like I said, seven-ish years on into the relationship, and I've known him for, maybe 11 years now.
Yeah. So you said partners. Let's talk about that a little bit, because it's kind of like bittersweet topic, right? I can't remember who said, if you want to walk far, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to walk far, go with a group or go with others. But partnership is kind of like a marriage, right? And in everything that you're promoting, there's a lot of using other people's effort, information, audiences, in a win-win situation, right? I don't want anyone, we're not taking advantage of anyone, but everything is in collaboration with someone else's efforts. And so when we talk about partnerships, how do people can make sure that they're not getting in, they're not putting themselves in a sick bed? Are there any things that when you think about partnership, you're like, okay, let me make sure this is check. Okay, we can have a conversation.
Yeah, there are a lot. So the first thing is that you learn this as an attorney practicing law, is that people don't sue people that they like. So you have to like the people you're going into partnership with as human beings. And if you don't, then you just shouldn't do it. If you're doing it because, well, I don't like this about them, but we can make money,
Yeah.
don't do it. That's a mistake, because a partnership it is very marriage-like. But it is generally less understanding than a marriage. You might be more understanding of family or a spouse than you would be of a partner. So that's something to think about as well. So that's the very first thing. And then as I'm looking at that, this is my friend Mark Anthony has a thing he calls PFM, people, fun, money. So the people thing, liking them is number one. And then I've kind of evolved that first thing to say, well, I also should have a little bit of information about, like, what's their history? Have they had successful partnerships in the past? Do they speak well of their past partners or ill of their past partners? Have they sued lots of people, been in lawsuits and things like that? That would be a pretty big red flag. That would be an out for me.
Yeah.
And so, that, like, those basic screening things with partners. The other thing is, if you have the blessing of doing a joint venture first. So a joint venture is like a mini partnership, right? This is like, let's do a transaction together. And that's where I always start is okay, look, we're thinking about doing this thing. Let's do something immediately so we can figure out if we get along, right?
Yeah.
And we'll try this thing. Now, if you try that thing and it doesn't work and you lost some money and things are still good, then that's a really big clue. And because if you can lose money with somebody and still go on, and this is not if they took the money and ran away on a trip. This is,
the business didn't go well.
Yeah, it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
Then that's a great screen, and that's a really good indication of somebody that would be a good actual partner past a joint venture. Then you get to fun. Am I going to have fun? Is this going to be something that I'm going to do and I'm actually going to like? Because if you don't have fun doing it, there's a very good chance that you'll find a way to sabotage it, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. So you have to be able to say, this is going to be fun for me, and I also know it's going to be fun for them. And then you get to money. And the very first part of the money is the deal that you have with them. Now, you have to be able to make money as an enterprise, but also in the deal with them, I have a thing I call the fairness zone. And to me, a deal is fair, and it's somewhat subjective, obviously, because I'm just defining the zone. But it's like, I will say, this is the worst deal that I'm going to allow them to cut, and this is the best deal that I'm going to allow them to cut. And I will not make a deal that's outside the fairness zone. So after we negotiate, I will say, are you super excited about this? And they're like, man, gosh, I just wish that I could have blah, blah. If I can't get them to the point where they're excited about it, I will not let someone negotiate badly for themselves outside of the low part of what I think the fairness zone is. Yeah. And if they agree to it, and I can do that, if they agree to something that's less than what I think the minimum is, I'll just be like, you know what, we should put you here instead, because I think this will make you happier. And if you do that, then you won't have people blowing up the partnership because they put themselves in a situation that they couldn't afford to be in. Because people will put themselves in a situation they can't afford to be in to have the opportunity to do a deal with you. Yeah. And that doesn't work, because nobody's going to be happy. They're going to find a way, like, they will either somehow justify. I had a guy one time that we put a limitation on the amount of checks that he could write on the dollar amount. I think it was $200 or $400. And he wrote like 50 $400 checks. And it's like, you learn, right? So that was my fault. Now, that was wrong for him to do that. Don't get me wrong. But it was also wrong for me to allow him, knowing what I knew about his financial situation, to not have enough to do what he needed to do. So that's to me, those are the three things: people, fun, and money, with those little lessons learned along the way, kind of supplementing that.
I love how you do that. I love that you're looking at the other persons and making sure that they're happy as well, because that's kind of like, hey, it's a sign for it's a recipe for great marriages, and it's also a recipe for good partnerships. I love that.
It's so funny because when I was younger, it'd be like, I'm going to negotiate the best deal I can. And I'm a great negotiator, and that's all ego. And then you get to, gosh, why are these deals blowing up? Well, they're blowing up because these people have agreed to negotiate the stuff they shouldn't have agreed to. So I'm going to have to step back and negotiate for them a little bit to be sure that it's, and ultimately it's just goes to what a lot of people call a win-win.
Yeah.
And I'm not crazy about that terminology, but it has to be something that everyone feels good about, that's fair. And it also has to just make fiscal sense, meaning they have to have enough money in the deal to be able to make this work for them. If they don't, it's not going to work out for you either. You just wasted your time and your money.
That's true. That's true. It takes longer to start a relationship with someone, right, and get them into going and into the game than it is to make it happen with someone who already knows you, who already knows how you play, who already knows how understands the things. Totally. And so now you have tools that help people do similar things to what you do. You're buying and selling businesses, right? You're investing in businesses, you're in masterminds, you have your own products, you have a podcast, and you created this tool called 585. And that tool allows people to 5 times the value of their business, reduce expenses by 80%, and increase their leads by 500%. Those numbers, to most people that get started, going like, way too much, right? How am I going to do that? So the tool exists. How do you come up with the tool?
It's really just from doing deals. So and this is funny, like that actual thing, the name 585 was given to me by a guy named Joel Weldon, who is part of one of the masterminds I'm in called Genius Network. And Genius Network is Joe Polish, who's a really interesting guy. And he's a good friend and just the nicest guy you'll ever meet, and one of the most connected. And Joe has this thing called a 10-minute talk. And so when you're part of the Genius Network, you can give this talk that's 10 minutes long, and it has to deliver $250,000 in value. Now, I will say many of them don't.
No pressure.
But some of them do, and everyone tries, and that's really good. And so Joel is a guy that is a speaker coach who is a member of Genius. And when you submit your 10-minute talk, Joel gets on the phone with you and says, okay, basically this is quality control. So you don't get up there and, because if you're not a speaker and you haven't had a lot of experience, you might have great stuff to share, but just not be able to get your act together to do it in 10 minutes in particular. So Joel helps you get everything done in 10 minutes. And I was like, and so I was thinking, well, what the heck am I going to talk about? I want to talk because it's always good to get up there because it helps you connect with people faster. And I'm the back of the room guy, so I'm way better to get up in front and then have people coming to me than me going to people. And I was just like, well, what are 3 things right now? And this was a couple years ago. What are the 3 things that I think are the most important right now? And we had really just completed transforming our business at Digital Marketer and all of our other businesses too, from a one-time pay to subscription model. And that came about as a result of a company called Spectrum Equity that came out to Digital Marketer to talk about making an investment. They're a growth capital company. So growth capital companies are companies that they don't want to buy you as much as they want to make a minority investment usually, but sometimes majority, less than 50% usually, in your company to give you the capital that you need to get to the next level. You're already successful, so it's not a VC, it's not a venture capital deal. And they said, when we met, they said, okay, tell us about your income. And we're like, okay, our income is X. And I said, okay, how much of that is recurring? And we were like, about this much. And they said, okay, we will give you about 5 times your recurring revenue as a valuation. And we were like, cool, that's great. This is not profit, this is revenue. And I said, okay, that's really great. And then they said, how much is one time? And we said, this much. And they said, okay, on the one-time revenue that you have to go out and sell every year, we'll give you a one-time. I was like, huh. So
interesting.
If we change this one-time stuff to recurring, then you would give us 5 times that. And they're like, yes. I was like, okay, we're going to change that to 5 times. So we're going to change that to recurring. So we completely re-engineered our business around that. And I shared that with everybody that I knew. And I just had a friend that entered into a large transaction with a significantly higher than 5 multiple for valuation. So right now, those recurring revenue valuations are kind of crazy high. So I've seen them up north of 10, and that's pretty crazy if you think that I can sell stuff that I have to go out and make sales every year. And even if every year I get, let's just say $1 million in sales,
right,
then that business is worth $1 million, even if I do it every single year. But if instead I have all these people on a program that is recurring revenue, that's a subscription type thing, then I'm going to get 5 times that as a value.
Does it matter
5.
how much the recurring is? If it's $20, $100, $50?
No, what really matters is how much is recurring, and there's several factors that go into it. But I mean, basically, you're going to get it no matter what. You just think about it that investors are about de-risking their investment. If you have to make a sale a new time every single time you go out to sell, that's more risky than if you've got people who have a proven record of paying you a certain amount of money for a long period of time, right?
Yeah.
So that's that. So that was the first thing, and then the second thing was we had just recently, my partner Perry had in particular in the content production side of our business, we had a whole bunch of websites, and we found that creating the content in the United States was just too expensive. So we had actually opened an office, hired people, have an HR director, a company in a building that we leased, everything, a real deal in the Philippines. And we were created, that was a shared services model. So that was a cost center, and it cost about just under $50,000 a month to have all of these people over there producing all this content. But it was a ton of people, and it was way less than what it cost in the United States. And we were billing that, we would divide that roughly 50 grand up. Let's say that we had 5 companies that were equally using the content. Then each of those companies would get a bill for,
10K, right?
For their 20%, for 10K a month. And we said, well, gosh, what if we could take all those costs and we would start providing content to other people, because we had some capacity, and we didn't want to let anybody go. And we said, okay, let's open a content as a service company, and we'll turn this expense center into a profit center. And so I ended up calling that E2P, right? Expenses to profits. And as I started sharing that with other people, we turned that from a cost center that was costing us, just under 50K a month, to I think it's in the 350 range now a month in revenue, right? So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think it's in about the $90,000 to $100,000 a month profit. So it went from a 50 negative per month to a profit of 100 a month. And so I started sharing that with other people, and everybody that I shared was like, oh my gosh, I could do that with this and this and this. And it was like, yeah. So that was the second thing. And then the third thing that we had been doing was we had gotten with a company called Infusionsoft, which is now called Keep. And we were doing a co-reg thing on leads, where we said, okay, look, they actually said, we would like to get more people taking demos of our product. And you guys are good at content marketing. So how about if we fund your marketing to get leads, and we share the leads, and you nurture them. You go ahead and sell them your stuff too, but also nurture them. And then whenever anybody's ready to get a demo of our product, send them to us. And I was like, well, that's kind of cool. So basically that started out with them paying $25,000 a month of our ad cost. And then we created, my partner Ryan created a double your sales content marketing little mini course kind of thing. And so Infusionsoft would pay the $25K to get this out there every month. It would go through our funnel that we built with Ryan. So it was building loyalty to Ryan too. And then we would sell them digital marketer stuff. And whenever they got ready to get a demo for Infusionsoft, they'd go through a nurture funnel. Then we'd send them over there. So I was like, that's pretty cool, because we were able to get 5 times as many leads as we had in that particular program
market,
for no money, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. And so I was sharing those 3 things with Joel as I was going through my 10-minute talk, which, by the way, getting all that stuff into 10 minutes makes you a better presenter. So I thank Joe for the 10-minute talk. And it also makes you build tools, because tools help you go through your content faster, and also a visual helps people understand better. So I was talking to Joel about those 3 things, and he's like, let's call it 585. It's like, great name. I love it. So I kept it. So that's what the 585 is basically, if you simply move to subscription revenue. And there's all kinds of factors that affect it, but typically that's about a 5x on your valuation. The expenses, we were able to actually turn our expenses into a profit center. But even if you suck at profit, you should be able to dramatically reduce your expenses. So I say up to 80%, even though it could be a whole lot better, and it was for us. And then the other 5 was do a co-reg thing where you take something that you're good at, and particularly if it's leads, and help somebody else get leads too under a co-reg, and you can 5 times your lead flow. So that's what that is.
And if you guys want access to the 10-minute training, just hop on into thatgeek.com/live. Just click right here. It will take you to Roland's page. And right here, you can enter information and grab it. So if you want access and you want to understand what we're talking about, thatgeek.com/live. You should see it right here. You can have access to the entire training, the PDF, and everything else that you need about that. So are you saying, well, I'm totally about to call you Ryan, that it's a smart idea to invest in communities and start building communities, and because those are the ones that have subscription model?
Well, yeah, I do. Well,
not on Facebook, right?
It doesn't have to be, not on Facebook or Google Plus.
Google Plus, right?
It doesn't have to be.
That was underground.
It doesn't have to be, definitely your own platform, but it doesn't have to be a subscription that is a community. It could be software. Software is
right? Yes.
Software is really where all that started, and software is where you're going to get the highest multiples. But it does apply across pretty much any subscription type business that has recurring revenue. So it could be auto ship even, right? And auto ship can be a recurring revenue, because if it proves that they stick, and then the big factor is churn. How many people stay for how long? The longer they stay, the higher your valuation is going to be.
Do you have a few more minutes for questions?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Stuart, let's unmute you and have you hop in. Just turn your camera on so we can see you. So Stuart joins us from, I don't know where are you joining us from,
Well,
Stuart?
I started out at a convenience store, then my van, then I'm back here right now. So thank you for the patience. I'm familiar with Ryan, familiar with Digital Marketer, and I certainly like the subscription model. That also can work for services where you're providing a services per month, I would assume.
Yeah, it can, but the valuations are different there. It's more that you are, because the services are typically provided under a contract, so there's just a different valuation model for services. It's not as good as for things that you're subscribing to when it's a service that's being provided. Because like our content thing is a service model, content is a service, but the valuation will get better than if we just sold contracts one time, but it's not quite as good as if it is a different kind of subscription like software or something like that. Still better.
I see. Well, my thought was on a cybersecurity service, one that delivers an identifiable protective value, if not any other way of phrasing that. I haven't come up with a better phrase for that. That once you set them up to where they're reasonably protected, then it's the testing monthly or weekly to keep up with the hackers. That seems to me that would be a model that a lot of companies would find valuable, including Digital Marketer.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And so when I'm speaking as a service, like if it's, say, an attorney that's on a retainer, that kind of thing, that's a different valuation model. But what you're talking about, that would apply to what we've been talking about as well.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
So, Ronald, what does a day in
Next time I'll try not to be in my van.
Oh. So what
Next
is a
time
day?
we just have to be able to see what's out that window.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to scoot around here because I'm not sitting in my usual spot. So I actually should show you the Sonoran Desert out here. I doubt that you've seen it. I don't know. You've been in San Diego.
I live in San Diego.
Yes. I mean, I'm in Tucson, so
Yeah, exactly.
I know where I'm at.
So, Roland, what is a day
Heath,
in?
are you there? You usually jump in about this point.
Oh, I'm muted. There you go. That's why I was like, I'm talking and nobody listens to me. So, Roland, what is a day in the day of version 2 of Roland Fraiser looks like?
Oh gosh, it's never the same, which is what I think keeps it interesting. So it's usually get up, work out. I like to try to think about the 3 things that I'm going to accomplish during the day. I can get about as much as 5 minutes of meditating before my mind starts to wander. So that's something I'm working on. And then I usually use the morning to catch up on everything, do any kind of posting I need to do, that sort of stuff. The whole rest of the day from about 9:30 to 10 o'clock on is usually just meeting type things. So it's either meetings or working on things that I'm creating for a product or a talk or something like that. But more than anything else, it's I'm meeting with people. I'm a people person, so I like to make deals, relationships, do transactions. Occasionally, I'll find myself drafting agreements, which I hate. And then there's quite a bit of travel because most of the deals are not here in San Diego, so I'm out and about on the road doing different things.
And we're about to start a new decade in a few weeks, right? 2 weeks or something like that. What do you wish for yourself for the new decade?
I have a whole list. So it's really just every year I like to up level. So what are the major things that I want to accomplish? There's a lot of things that we're in the process of exiting right now. We had 3 exits of companies in the digital marketer type group this year. We've got a couple more that I think will happen next year. One we're in the middle of right now. And then a lot of global expansion. So we just launched our mastermind called the Scalable Mastermind in the UK, expanding that into the EU. I've got a lot. I just spoke in Germany a week or so ago. I have a lot of speaking engagements in Europe as I work to expand my personal brand and our other brands there. We have some strategic partners in Russia. We'll be doing, I believe, a traffic and conversion summit in Russia in November of next year, which will be nice and cold. And we're working on one in Singapore right now. Digital marketers expanding with country partners in different countries, both in Europe and in Asia right now. So a lot of my focus is on those things. And then I've got, I have an event. I love events too. I have an event that I am in the process of rolling out here in the States and in the UK with partners. So scaling that up. Those are really my main focuses. I've got advisory roles with several companies right now too, with a real estate brokerage, a franchise food concept that's about to. There's I think about 24 owned stores right now that's getting ready to go
Fantastic.
Across the country and hopefully across the world, and a company, a book publishing company, and a couple of others. So those are really fun because I get to do what I feel I'm best at, which is strategy and deals. And so that's really my focus. I've got a book that will be coming out end of the third quarter, early fourth quarter next year. So that's an exciting project, and then just general new things that come up.
I was about to say like 2 words: world domination, because you're everywhere.
World expansion for sure.
That's fantastic. I love that you hardly spend time at home, right? You travel like most of the year.
I would say my wife would disagree. I would say that I probably spend as much as 6 months traveling and the other 6 at home. I think it's more than 6 at home, but she would probably argue with me about that. So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt on that.
I'm with your wife on that. It just feels like you're all over the world all the time and barely at home.
Well, it's like, so I was 9 days this month out because I flew to Germany to speak and then flew to London. So I'll travel fast to a lot of places. Mm-hmm. And then the month before, we were vacationing in Europe for 2 weeks. We were actually 3 weeks. So that wasn't that was any of that business? Yeah, that was 5 days of business, but the whole rest of the time we were in
Pleasure.
Bordeaux and Burgundy. So that's, you can call that travel because that's fun, but I like from work travel. I think my work travel is probably 3.5, 4 months out of the year,
And it's
which is
actually pretty inspiring, right? Because you manage to travel and work. Granted, most of the time you are in meetings, so you're not having to find Wi-Fi and sit there and do work. But still, when you have all those meetings back to back, how do you find time to really explore and engage on social media with everybody else?
the social media engagement's really easy, I think, because there you find that you have so much time that you're waiting for stuff. So particularly if you're traveling, but just generally, like I'll show up for a meeting and somebody won't be there yet, so or I'll get there 10 minutes early, and so then I can go through and answer questions on social. And I love to write, so I just have ideas. I have an unlimited number of ideas. Anytime something pops into my head about like, oh, that would be good, then I'll make a note in my iPhone on my ideas page. I just use notes for that. And then I'll go back when I find I've got 15 or 20 minutes, and I write pretty fast. I'll go, oh, that'd be a great article. So I'll just, and that might be lying in bed in the morning, lying in bed at night, waiting, for an airplane to come in an airplane lounge, airport lounge or something like that. It might be on the plane because, I fly internationally a fair amount. So you got 10 or 11 hours.
Yeah.
And that to me is really good quiet time. I can get a whole lot of stuff done. So I just find that the social is very easy. And then the integrating other stuff in is business takes good business doesn't take a long time. So when I was in Germany, I was speaking and I had to go to one meeting, and I was there for 2 days. So I had a whole day to hang out and walk through the Christmas market and all that stuff. And when I was in London, we did an event for 2 days, which was all day long. But then we had 2 days that we weren't committed to do anything. So, I was able to just walk around and go. And so I think it's just planning. Like if you push yourself when you're traveling and you say you've got a thing in New York and you're flying from San Diego and that's a six-hour flight. Yeah. And you land in New York and then you go into the meeting and then you fly back, or you just beat yourself up, then you're gonna wear yourself out. I don't do that. I always give myself extra time, and so that helps. And then I always travel as first class as I can travel. I stay in the nicest place that I can stay, because if it's like home, then I am not. Again, it's all about friction. If you have friction with travel, then travel will eat you alive. Yeah. But if you eliminate all the friction and it becomes pleasant, then that's cool. And we comment, like when we walk into the Tower Suites at the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas, I feel like I'm home. When I walk into the Savoy in London, I feel like I'm home. It's at New York, it's the Plaza. I'm home. It's just I think that you have to build pleasure into the work that you do, and you have to give yourself a little of extra time. And if you do that, and it doesn't take a lot to do that, just treating yourself well, then travel can be just fulfilling and fun, and you have time to do all kinds of things.
Yeah. So if we're looking at wrapping it up and moving from the impossible to the possible, I'm hearing you say mindset, surround yourself with the right people, make a decision, be humble, serve, right? Find out what other people need. So it's always a win-win situation, even if they cut themselves, and pamper yourself, right? Treat yourself well so that you actually want to have fun in the process. Did I forget anything?
No, I love it.
And so a big wish for you for 20, so you have like world domination, writing a book, so many things, traveling and speaking. One personal wish for you for 2020. What is that?
Oh, it's just, to me, I really love having impact. So having positive impact on the lives of the people that come into contact with me or my content. So if I can help one person to feel better about themselves, to take action, to get to the things that they want, to not make a bad decision, if things aren't doing well, then I feel like that was a win. And if it's more than one, then that's fantastic. If it's none, then I'm trying, and I'll continue to adapt and try to find new ways to reach people. But I get messages all the time from people that have who have had excuse me, big changes in their lives from listening or watching or hanging out with me and the content that I've got, and that's just amazingly rewarding. So I'm just looking for having as much impact as I can to help people.
Yeah, and if anyone's following Roland on social or reading his posts on Facebook, you know the guy is making an impact. So you're doing it already. So fantastic. Thank you so much, Roland, for taking the time to be here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for joining in and commenting on Twitter and on YouTube and right here on the site. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next decade on the next show of I'm That Geek.